Tom Hanks is sitting outside a casting office in 1980, crying after his worst audition ever, when a homeless man sits next to him and says 5 words that stop him cold. You think you had it rough. What happens in the next 20 minutes doesn't just stop Tom from quitting acting. It becomes the philosophy that keeps him grounded for 40 years, teaches him the difference between problems and opportunities, and proves that sometimes the most important teachers don't have offices or credentials or even homes. They just have perspective, and perspective is the only thing that separates despair from gratitude. This is the story of Eddie, the homeless man who taught Tom Hanks everything about gratitude and nothing about his last name. How one conversation on a sidewalk changed the trajectory of a career, and how Tom spent 40 years trying to find a man who didn't want to be found, because the lesson was never about Eddie. It was always about Tom learning to see what he had instead of what he didn't. New York City, September 1980. Thursday afternoon, 4:23 p.m. Tom Hanks walks out of a casting office on West 44th Street, 4th floor. Walk up narrow stairs, the kind of building that smells like old wood and broken dreams. Tom reaches the sidewalk, stops, stands there, doesn't move, can't move, just stands. Frozen, defeated, destroyed. That was the worst audition of his life. Not just bad, catastrophic, humiliating. The kind that makes you question everything, makes you wonder if you're delusional. If everyone who said you're wasting your time was right. If the dream is just denial with better marketing. Tom is 24 years old, been in New York for 2 years, came with hope, with ambition, with the certainty that talent and work ethic would be enough. 2 years later, he's learning they're not even close. This city eats hope, chews it up, spits it out. And Tom is one of 1,000 actors learning this lesson the hard way. The audition was for an off-Broadway play, small theater, experimental production, ensemble cast, the kind of thing that pays nothing but builds resume. Tom needed it, needed anything, needed proof he's an actor and not just a waiter who sometimes pretends. Tom prepared for a week, memorized the sides, studied the character, made choices, found emotional truth, did everything right, then walked into the audition room and forgot everything, completely blanked, couldn't remember lines, couldn't find the character, couldn't connect to the material, just stood there, stammering, apologizing, dying inside while 3 people behind a table watched with increasing impatience. The director stopped him after 2 minutes. "Thank you. That's enough. We'll be in touch." The tone that means we absolutely will not be in touch. The tone that means please leave so we can forget you exist. Tom left, walked down 4 flights of stairs, each step heavier than the last, carrying the weight of failure, of inadequacy, of the growing realization that maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe New York isn't the answer. Maybe acting isn't the calling. Maybe it's time to go home, get a real job, accept reality. Now Tom is standing on the sidewalk, 4:23 p.m., September in New York. Still warm, humid, the city buzzing with life. People rushing past, taxis honking, street vendors calling out, the relentless energy of New York. Everyone going somewhere, everyone with purpose, everyone except Tom, who's standing still, going nowhere. No purpose, just failure. Tom's eyes start burning, then blurring, then tears, right there on West 44th Street. In the middle of the day, in the middle of Manhattan, 24 years old, crying on a sidewalk, because he bombed an audition for an unpaid role in a play nobody will see. Tom tries to stop, tries to pull it together, can't. The tears come. Not dramatic, Not loud, just quiet. Steady, the tears of someone who's been holding it together too long, who's been pretending too hard, who's finally breaking. Tom sits down, right there, on the sidewalk, back against the building, tees up, head down, crying, not caring who sees, not caring about anything anymore. Then a voice, rough, weathered, close. "You think you had it rough?" Tom looks up. A man is sitting next to him. Wasn't there a moment ago? Just appeared, or Tom was too lost to notice. The man is maybe 50, maybe 60, hard to tell. Weathered face, deep lines, graying beard, worn clothes, layers, too many layers for September, dirty, torn, a backpack, overstuffed, duct tape holding it together, sleeping bag rolled on top. The man is homeless, obviously homeless, and he's looking at Tom with an expression that's not sympathy, not pity, something else, something harder, something that looks like amusement, mixed with disappointment. Tom wipes his face, embarrassed. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." The man waves this away. "You didn't answer my question. You think you had it rough today? Whatever just happened that's got you crying on a public sidewalk like a child?" Tom doesn't know how to respond. Feels stupid, childish, like he just got called out by someone who actually has problems, real problems, not actor problems. Tom says quietly, "I had a bad audition." The man nods. "Bad audition. That's what's got you in tears. A bad audition." Tom says, "It wasn't just bad. It was." The man interrupts. "Let me tell you about my day. I woke up at 5 a.m. in a doorway on 8th Avenue. Someone had pissed next to me during the night. So I woke up covered in someone else's piss. Spent 20 minutes in a McDonald's bathroom, trying to clean myself with paper towels. Got kicked out by the manager. Told not to come back. Walked to the shelter on 30th. They were full. No beds. No food. Walked to another shelter. Same thing. Spent the afternoon sitting in the park trying to figure out where I'm sleeping tonight. Came back to this block because there's a church that sometimes leaves food out back. It's Thursday. They don't leave food on Thursday. So I'm sitting here, next to you, a grown man crying because he didn't get a pretend job where he pretends to be someone else." Tom stares, can't speak. The comparison is brutal, devastating, true. The man continues, "You want to know the difference between us? You had a bad audition. You'll go home tonight, sleep in a bed, eat dinner, wake up tomorrow and try again. Me, I don't have a bed, don't have tomorrow in any way that means anything. You're crying over opportunity. I'm surviving loss. Learn the difference." Tom says, voice cracking, "I'm sorry, you're right. I'm being." The man says, "You're being human. Humans are idiots about perspective. We think our problems are the biggest problems because they're our problems, but they're not. They're just ours. That doesn't make them big, just makes them close." Tom says, "How did you?" He stops, doesn't know how to ask. "How did you end up here? How did this happen? How does someone go from having a life to living on the street?" The man sees the question, answers it without being asked. "I was a teacher, high school English, taught for 15 years, had a wife, had a house, had a life. Then my wife got sick, cancer, 3 years of treatment, bankrupted us, medical bills, lost the house. She died anyway. 2 years ago, I fell apart. Depression, couldn't work, lost my job, couldn't pay rent, lost my apartment, ended up here, on the street, living out of a backpack. That's the story. Nothing special, nothing unique, just life. Life doesn't care about your plans, doesn't care about your resume. Just happens, and you deal with it, or you don't. Tom says, I don't know what to say. The man says, don't say anything. Listen, that's what you need. Not talking, listening. You're sitting here crying because you think you failed. You think that audition defines you, defines your worth, defines your future. It doesn't. You know what defines you? How you respond, what you do next. I lost everything. My wife, my career, my home, my dignity, everything. And you know what? I'm still here, still surviving, still finding reasons to wake up. Not good reasons, but reasons. You lost nothing. You didn't have that job. You still don't have it. Nothing changed, except now you're crying, like the world ended. The world didn't end. Your ego got bruised. That's all. Tom feels shame. Deep shame. Not because the man is shaming him, because the man is right. Tom has been treating his struggles like tragedies, his rejections like catastrophes, his inconveniences like injustices. But sitting next to someone who lost everything, actually everything, Tom sees how small his problems are, how privileged his suffering is. Tom says, what's your name? The man says, Eddie. Tom says, I'm Tom. Eddie nods. Tom who cries on sidewalks. Tom almost laughs. Can't quite get there, but almost. Yeah, that's me. Eddie says, you want my advice, Tom? Stop crying over auditions. Stop treating rejection like death. You're an actor. Rejection is the job. If you can't handle rejection, you're in the wrong profession. But if you can handle it, if you can hear no 1,000 times and still show up, then you'll make it. Not because you're talented, because you're resilient. That's what this business requires. Not talent, resilience. The ability to get told you're not good enough and come back anyway. Can you do that? Tom thinks, doesn't know. Thought he could, but sitting here, broken, after one bad audition, maybe he can't. Tom says honestly, I don't know. Eddie says, good, that's the right answer. Anyone who says yes is lying. You don't know until you do it, until you face it. You had one bad audition. One. You'll have 100 more, 1,000 more, and each time you'll have to decide, do I quit or do I keep going? That's the only question that matters. Not am I talented, not am I good enough, just do I keep going? You answer that question every day, every audition, every rejection. That's the career. Not booking jobs, deciding to keep going when you don't book them. Tom says, why are you telling me this? Eddie says, because I was you. 25 years ago, I was a young teacher, thought I was making a difference, thought I had it figured out. Then life happened, and I learned, nothing's figured out, nothing's guaranteed. The only thing you control is whether you keep going. I stopped. I gave up. After my wife died, I could have kept teaching, could have rebuilt, but I didn't. I quit, and now I'm here. I don't want you to be here. I don't want you to quit because of one bad day, because 25 years from now, you'll look back and wonder why you gave up over something so small. Tom says, you didn't give up. You're still here, still surviving. Eddie says, surviving isn't living. I survive. You have the chance to live. Don't confuse them. They sit in silence. 5 minutes. 10. People walk past. Ignore them. 2 men sitting on a sidewalk. 1 homeless. 1 looks like he might be. Nobody stops. Nobody cares. New York doesn't stop for anyone. Finally Tom says, thank you. Eddie says, for what? Tom says, for perspective, for reminding me that my problems aren't problems. They're just challenges, opportunities. I was treating them like disasters. But you're right, I lost nothing today. I just didn't gain something I never had. That's not loss. That's just life. Eddie nods. Now you're getting it. Tom pulls out his wallet. $23. Palsy $3. All he has until Friday, until his next paycheck from the restaurant. He pulls out a 20, hands it to Eddie. Please, take it. Eddie looks at the money. Doesn't take it. Keep it. Tom says, you need it more than I do. Eddie says, I need nothing. You need dinner. You need subway fare. You need to keep going. I taught you something today. That's payment enough. You don't owe me money. You owe yourself a better attitude. Go home, eat dinner, sleep. Wake up tomorrow and try again. That's how you pay me back. Tom says, can I help you? Can I? Eddie says, you can't help me. I'm beyond help, not in a tragic way. In a realistic way. I'm 58 years old. I've been on the street for 2 years. I'm not getting off the street. This is my life now. And that's okay. I made peace with it. You're 24. You have 40 years ahead. Don't waste them crying on sidewalks. Use them. Make something. Not for me. For yourself. Tom says, can I find you? Can I come back? Talk to you again? Eddie says, why would you want to? Tom says, because you're the most honest person I've met in this city. Because everyone else tells me what I want to hear. You told me what I needed to hear. That's rare. Eddie says, I'm here most days. This block. If you want to find me, you'll find me. If you don't, you won't. Either way, I'll be fine. The question is, will you? Eddie stands, picks up his backpack, adjusts the sleeping bag, looks down at Tom. Stop crying, Tom. Start working. That's the only advice that matters. Eddie walks away, down 44th Street, doesn't look back, disappears into the crowd, into the city, into the anonymity of homelessness. Gone. Tom sits there for another 10 minutes, thinking, processing, feeling something shift inside, not fixed, but shifted from despair to determination, from self-pity to perspective, from I can't do this to I have to do this. Tom stands, wipes his face, goes home to his tiny apartment. His roommate's not there. Tom sits at the table, writes in his journal, something he does sometimes. Processing through writing, he writes, today I met a homeless man named Eddie. He taught me that my problems aren't problems. They're opportunities. I was crying because I failed an audition. He's surviving because he lost everything. And he has more grace than I do, more wisdom, more perspective. I will remember Eddie. I will remember this conversation. And every time I want to quit, every time I want to complain about how hard this is, I will remember Eddie is still here, still surviving. I have no excuse to quit. None. Tom doesn't quit, keeps going. Books small roles, builds slowly, moves to LA, books bosom buddies, then splash, then big, then everything. And through it all, through every success, every failure, every moment of doubt, Tom remembers Eddie, remembers the homeless man who taught him perspective, who taught him that problems and opportunities are the same thing viewed from different angles. Tom tries to find Eddie, goes back to New York in 1985, walks West 44th Street, looks for him, asks around, describes him. Nobody knows, nobody's seen him. Eddie is gone, or was never there, in the way Tom remembers. Memory is unreliable, especially transformative memories. Maybe Eddie was exactly as Tom remembers. Maybe he was something else. Either way, the lesson remains. Tom tries again in 1990, 1995, 2000. Every time he's in New York, walks that block, looks for Eddie, never finds him, never learns what happened, never gets closure, just carries the lesson, carries the conversation, carries the perspective Eddie gave him. Tom wins his second Oscar, Philadelphia, playing a man dying of AIDS. In his acceptance speech, Tom thanks his family, his collaborators, and then says something unexpected. I want to thank Eddie, a homeless man I met in 1980. I was sitting on a sidewalk in New York, crying after a bad audition, and Eddie sat next to me and taught me the difference between problems and opportunities. I never saw him again, spent 28 years looking, never found him, but I never forgot him. Eddie, if you're out there, if you're watching, thank you for perspective, for honesty, for teaching me to stop crying and start working. This is as much yours as it is mine. The camera cuts to the audience. Everyone's confused. Who's Eddie? Why is Tom Hanks thanking a homeless man? Entertainment reporters spend weeks trying to find Eddie, tracking down the story. Nobody finds him. Nobody confirms he exists. The story becomes Hollywood legend. The homeless man who changed Tom Hanks. The teacher who had no home, but taught the most important lesson. Tom creates a foundation, the Eddie Fund, for homeless individuals. Not just housing, education, job training, mental health services. Everything Eddie might have needed, everything Tom wishes he could have given him. The fund raises $2 million. First year, Tom matches it. $4 million total, helps 847 people transition off the streets, get jobs, rebuild lives. Tom doesn't publicize this, doesn't promote it, just does it, quietly, the way Eddie would have wanted. COVID, pandemic. Tom gets sick, survives, during quarantine, writes a memoir, one chapter, The Man Who Saved My Career, about Eddie, about that day in 1980, about the 20-minute conversation that changed everything. Tom writes, I've won Oscars, made millions, been on magazine covers, met presidents, and the most important conversation of my career happened on a sidewalk with a homeless man whose last name I never learned. Eddie taught me that failure is perspective, that problems are opportunities, that crying over auditions is a luxury, that real suffering is losing everything and still surviving. I was crying because I didn't get a job I didn't have. Eddie was surviving because he lost a life he did have, and he still had more grace than me, more wisdom, more strength. I've spent 40 years trying to find him, to thank him, to tell him what he meant. I never found him. Maybe he died. Maybe he got off the streets. Maybe he never wanted to be found, but I think about him every day. Every time I want to complain, every time I think I have problems, I remember Eddie, and I shut up, and I'm grateful for what I have, for what I've built, for the perspective Eddie gave me when I needed it most. The book becomes a bestseller. Entertainment reporters try again to find Eddie, track down homeless records from 1980, search death records. Missing persons, nothing. Eddie remains a mystery, a ghost, a legend, the man who taught Tom Hanks everything and disappeared into history. But people start sharing their own Eddie stories. The teacher who said the right thing, The stranger who gave perspective, the unexpected conversation that changed everything. Eddie becomes a symbol, not a person. A reminder that wisdom doesn't come from credentials or office or status. Sometimes comes from sidewalks, from broken people, from those the world overlooks. Tom is 68 years old, doing an interview. Young journalist asks, "Did Eddie really exist, or is he a metaphor?" Tom says, "Eddie existed. I remember him, the conversation, the rough voice, the worn clothes, the backpack held together with duct tape, the way he looked at me like I was being an idiot, because I was. He existed. Whether I could find him again doesn't matter. What matters is what he taught me. Perspective is everything. Problems are opportunities. Crying over rejection is a waste of time. Eddie survived losing everything. I was crying over losing nothing. He showed me that in 20 minutes. On a sidewalk. That's real. That happened. Everything after, the career, the awards, the success, came from that conversation. From Eddie teaching me to stop crying and start working." The journalist asks, "What would you say to him if you found him?" Tom thinks, long time, then says, "Thank you for perspective, for honesty, for caring enough to stop. You didn't have to. You had real problems, real suffering. But you stopped, sat down, taught me. That's grace. That's kindness. That's everything I've tried to be. I don't know if I succeeded, but I tried. Because of you. So thank you for saving my career, for saving me. I spent 40 years looking for you, never found you, but you were always there, in every decision, every challenge, every moment. I wanted to quit. I'd remember you, remember your voice. You think you had it rough. Snow. Eddie. I didn't. I don't. I never did. You taught me that. And I never forgot." The journalist asks, "Do you think he knows what he meant to you?" Tom says, "I hope so. I hope wherever he is, alive, dead, housed, still on the streets, I hope he knows that 20 minutes mattered, that stopping to talk to a crying actor mattered, that his words became a career, became a foundation, became a philosophy. I hope he knows, but even if he doesn't, I know, and I'll keep telling the story, keep thanking him, keep living the lesson he taught. That's how you honor teachers, not by finding them, by living what they taught." Eddie, last name unknown, final fate unknown, existence questioned by some, taught Tom Hanks the most important lesson of his career. Perspective is everything. Problems are opportunities. Crying is optional. Working is mandatory. 20 minutes on a sidewalk. One homeless man. One crying actor. One conversation. 40 years of impact. $2 million for homeless services. Thousands of lives changed. All because Eddie stopped, sat down, spoke truth. The Eddie Fund still operates, still helps people, still carries Eddie's name, still honors the man who taught Tom Hanks everything about gratitude and nothing about his last name. Because some teachers don't need credentials, don't need offices, don't need homes, just need truth, just need perspective, just need 20 minutes. And the willingness to tell a crying stranger to stop crying and start working. Eddie did that for Tom, for thousands who heard the story, for everyone who learned, your problems aren't problems, they're opportunities, and crying over them is a luxury Eddie couldn't afford, a luxury Tom learned to give up. That's the lesson, that's the legacy. That's Eddie, the homeless man who saved Tom Hanks' career by teaching him his career was never in danger, just his perspective was. 20 minutes, one conversation, 40 years of gratitude for the man who stopped, who spoke, who disappeared, who mattered more than he'll ever know, unless he's out there, watching, knowing, smiling at the actor who stopped crying and started working. Thank you, Eddie. Wherever you are, whatever happened, thank you.